The following program is a presentation of Winchester Academy.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, good. If at any time, be like, hey, turn it up a notch. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. This is a nice packed crowd. I didn't know I could bring such a crowd. So I hope to basically go over all of these different design concepts for a sustainable landscape, low maintenance, and being able to sustain your yards. So I really specialize in that as I'm helping grow the botanical gardens up in Wausau because we need low maintenance because we're limited on our staff. We have a lot of volunteer help, so we need to make it nice and easy for that. And I also do landscape consulting as well. So I go out to houses and for an hour we'll brainstorm, discuss what we can do to create a DIY landscape and how it can be managed effectively. So we're going to be going over that. And then it's going over a lot of different concepts to think about, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of the plant, like placement and stuff later, or if you have certain plant questions and stuff, we'll pass that around as we go. So thank you very much for having me tonight. Oh, which one is it? There it is. Okay, perfect. So basically, here's an overview of who I am. So I was hired in 2020 at Monk Botanical Gardens, right in March of 2020. COVID really threw a wrench in some things. They were able to keep me. So Monk Botanical Gardens is a nonprofit, and they did whatever they could to keep me and the two other staff that were on at that time as well. And we really did some creative thinking for revenue at that time, keeping the gardens open and safe. And we kind of thought up some really cool events and different education programs during that time as well. I got really good at Facebook Lives. I do like garden chats, and I'm like going throughout the gardens, and we're talking to our plant friends and everything. So like she said before, I do have a bachelor's degree in horticulture with an emphasis in that landscape design and management. So basically at the gardens as the horticulture and grounds manager, what a mouthful. I maintain the grounds and facilities. I'm a Jackie of all trades. So if there's a toilet broken, I'm dealing with it. If I have to go on the tractor and load some things, I'm going to do that. So basically we have, I'll get into the nitty gritty of the gardens, but basically 30 acres that I am managing along with all of the different volunteer groups, the tours that are coming through, everything like that. So I do a lot of project management. So if we get funding for a certain project, we gotta fly with it, figure out a budget, figure out that design, and let's get it moving basically. So then organizing those volunteer work days, I work with anybody from 5 years old up to 100. So I have all sorts of different projects, different accessibility ranges, everything like that. Then I also manage interns. I usually hire about 3 interns through AmeriCorps every summer, and then we have different opportunities throughout the year as well during the school year. So I'm always keeping them busy. I also do adult education workshops. So we do a series called Hands on Plants. So like during the winter time, I really focus in on like holiday porch pots, kissing balls, like hand-tied wreaths, everything like that. So that's a super fun time for me. I also do like fall and spring ones as well. Just really getting that adult age group out there because we do have educators that do a lot of just young, more grade school out at the gardens. And then public outreach like I'm doing today. And like I said, that landscape consultation program, along with all of my duties out at the gardens, I usually do between 25 and 30 landscape consultations during and throughout the growing season. And I can do anything from hand designs to just, we go out and chat and we brainstorm, you know, let's divide this, or let's get rid of this plant, you don't like it, and let's get some ideas going here. And I help to coordinate all the different events at the gardens as well as needed. Okay, so now that you know about me, here's an introduction to Monk Botanical Gardens. If you've never heard of it, been there, has anyone ever been to Monk Botanical Gardens? We have a few. Thank you. So it has been kind of developing slowly, I would say. So things really started in 2003, 2004 when 21 acres of the land was donated by Mr. Monk, Robert W. Monk. There's not a Monk monastery, it's just his last name. So he decided, he had this parcel of land, it's about 30 acres, and he has development of duplexes and different property around there. And he decided, you know, I really love gardens, I really love going to other botanical gardens, I love educating others as well. And people kept on sneaking in his land and like having picnics and enjoying his gardens. So he was like, maybe I should have this be created into a botanical garden. So that is the main mission here, is we are trying to create those gardens and the educational opportunities along with it. And in 2010, they really started development, like started clearing things out. As I would say, the gardens kind of became an invasive cesspool as it sat, because even before 2003, it had been declining because he couldn't take care of it anymore. So it just got infested with buckthorn, autumn olive, oriental bittersweet, and just like Dame's rocket and everything like that. So the board was created, the organization was created, and they had to figure out where to even start in this land. So it kind of took a while. And then in 2018, we were able to hire our executive director, and they were able to purchase the additional 9 acres that we have today. So it was kind of weird what was donated. We got the Monk house, so his original homestead, and it was like split in half where we only had half of the pond, and it would have been weird. So we made sure we were able to get the rest of the land that we needed. And then in 2019, we had our event and education coordinator hired. And then I was hired in 2020. 2021, we were able to open up a garden preschool called Sprouts. So we were able to hire more educators, and a lead teacher and a development manager. So things are really rapidly going on during this time. And last year we were able to get a groundskeeper to help me out on the grounds, and then 2 assistant teachers, an administrative assistant. So we've got somebody to answer phones now. It's like amazing. And a volunteer coordinator as well, who's helping me out to coordinate all of these things. And this year we are hiring additional lead and assistant teachers as well, because we're putting up 2 more yurts, and we are offering a full day of preschool, and then our 4 sessions of half day. So you might be wondering what this preschool is. So it is 80% outside. The kids are outside, rolling around in the mud. It's great. They're learning how to count with pine cones instead of blocks. And a lot of them know more about nature than I do. So it's a really great program to get the kids outside. So what do the gardens look like today? Just kidding, it's not really that snowy there. This was taken a couple weeks ago. So we have about 10 acres of that 30 developed. So there are 6 themed garden spaces, which I'll go through a few of those, and then we'll get into our nitty-gritty. We are open 7 days a week for the public. So you might be wondering, well, do I have to like pay to get in? It is a suggested donation of $5, and there's a post. Nobody's there looking for your money. We'd love your money to keep things going. But it's open 7 to 7, so you just come in our parking lot, grab that lever, and you can let yourself in. We have about 1 mile of walking trails in there, and you can meander through the gardens. And you'll probably see me or one of our other staff there. So last year alone, we got a cool people counter, and it counted 64,000 visitors last year, which we were amazed at. We have been underestimating ourselves. But if you're there on a nice day in June, it is crazy with the amount of people there. So I guess we're doing a good thing. And then we have about 130 active volunteers, and then we have 333 members so far. So we're always encouraging more memberships, because as we develop, we're going to eventually have an opportunity to have like a gatehouse or a visitor center to charge and start making revenue that way. So some of those themed gardens are Wildflower Woods. If you're really into the natives, this is the place to go. It was the first one that was started in 2010. They started to clear and plant a lot of native canopy trees. So a lot of those varieties, so the canopy is started because it was a lot of red pines. It was a red pine plantation, so we're trying to scooch those out of there and get some new and just unique varieties in there, and more of the natives as well. And we want to continue planting that understory because a lot of what is planted there right now is spring ephemerals. So in the springtime, gorgeous in there. But when I came in, I'm like, what's happening in here in summer and fall? And I'm like, it all makes sense. You've got the shade of the canopy, but there isn't a lot of natives that can tolerate the shade and that are really blooming throughout the summertime and into fall. So we're kind of working on that whole theme in there and seeing what really fits. There's also a memory plaza in that area, and you might find people like playing ukulele or doing yoga in that area. It's a super serene area. And there are over 30 different tree species in this area. Eventually, if you go there, there is a lot of grass area. Eventually, that will be covered in native plants. That's what the plan is. So then we have the meditation garden that was next up in the development, and this is going to be happening in a couple different phases. So you can see our lovely green pond. It's not algae, it's duckweed, and they're good little fellas. They're like microscopic little lily pads. And then you can see we have a dry riverbed that runs through it as well when the pond gets too full. We are going to be renovating that pond this summer. Thank goodness. Because there's a lot of muck. From what I've been told, Mr. Monk, I guess, tried to dig out some of the pond himself and create some ditches. And there's been a lot of, just runoff from kind of the streets and a lot of sediment coming in where it shouldn't be. So we are kind of taking that on this summer, and it should be fun and stinky. We'll be posting when it's happening, so if you want to avoid that. Because we found out there's about 4 to 5 feet of muck in there that we've got to dredge out. So at the east end of the pond, there is plans to be expanding in this area as well for like a Zen garden and a tea house. So we have a lot of room to expand. We've just got to get our feet under us and get the funding in order to do so. And we are going to be putting in a fountain in this area as well as a big memorial too. We also have the Japanese torii gates in this area to resemble the welcoming of the Asian-inspired gardens. We also have a kitchen garden and potager. So potager is French for kitchen garden. Some people say potager, which I'm totally fine with. If you want to call it the pavilion, that's fine too, or that building over there. That's where our bathrooms are, and so basically it's a farm-to-table kind of experience. So underneath there we have like the pizza oven that's with the brick. We've got a fireplace, a stovetop that you can cook on and everything. We've got picnic tables that transform into benches. We do a lot of our programming under there. So basically this is a great area. We have 26 volunteers that take on all 11 kitchen garden beds, and I plan them out, and each of them has a theme each year. So like the legumes are peas, beans are the magical fruits. And we usually have about over 200 different varieties of vegetables that we are displaying in this area. They each have labels. You can check those out as you meander through. We just ask that people in this area, we ask that you don't pick stuff. Like you might be picking a fatale habanero and you don't know it. You might think it's a sweet pepper and it doesn't go well. So if you see staff or volunteers in this area, you can ask if you can try to sample something and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. But we do have like kiosks that you can grab produce from as well. Then we do we use a lot of this produce with our programming, like pizza in the garden. We do a couple different nights during the summertime with this. We have Politos come out and they show you how to throw the dough, and then you add all your toppings, and then you put it in the oven. We do a big event called Booze and Botany, where we pair up with local mixologists and different chefs, and we have different hors d'oeuvres and different drinks that are paired together, and it's a nice event. And then we have, like, after school in the garden. I've never seen kids eat so many carrots. They just, like, pick them out, and they're like, they're the greatest, and they're just eating hunks of dirt with it. I don't know. And Barbie melons or Mexican sour gherkins is a go-to for kids, if you ever want those. And then we also have field trips almost every day during like April and May, and then once you get into the fall, we've got a ton of field trips coming through. We also offer member harvest nights, so at a certain membership level, you can come on Wednesday nights and harvest, and you can take a bag full of produce every night, so or every week. So that's a nice perk. And like I said, we have that kiosk, and then we donate the remaining food to whether it's Neighbor's Place or the Marathon County Hunger Coalition. And volunteers get some too. There's a lot. So for the master gardeners out there, we have a hosta garden, shade and hosta garden. Our North Central Wisconsin master gardeners have raised the funds for and are maintaining this garden. So they have over 120 different hosta varieties. So they had to clear the whole area of all the buckthorn and invasives. Lots of grapevines as well. Those are fun. And they finished this. It's a 3-berm project, and it's about an acre of gardens. And they finished that in 2021. Now they're waiting for those hostas to get big enough to be able to be certified as a national display garden for the American Hosta Society. So we've got about 1 more year of growth we've got to get, and then we'll be certified. So we have to add the Hosta of the Year every year to continue our basic eligibility for that. So they are demonstrating how to create that canopy because you can see a lot of red pines, and they keep on progressively taking them out and adding more and more shade trees in this area. So they're showing shade tolerance with all of those perennials and shrubs in this area. So Sarah's Storybook Garden is in the works. We've got it happening right now. Phase 1 is in the works. It's about an acre as well, and it's right next to that shade and hosta garden. You might see like a horse topiary. Its name is Pumpernickel. And you're going to see that at the start of the garden. And then if you come and visit, you're probably going to see some cool things happening with a cordwood building. And it's actually going to be a hobbit house with like the round door. And we're getting a living roof put on it with a ground cover collection going in around it. It also has colored block gardens leading up to it. So it's a very educational space, very inspirational and interactive space for kids and adult visitors. And we're getting 8 different sculptures put in 8 of the different colored blocks. And the alternative high school in the area from NTC is making those, and the students are learning to weld that way. And we've got a daylily labyrinth that we're starting to make. So this has 32 different daylily varieties that are going to be circling around there for the kids to kind of go in, or if you want to go in there too. And basically the next phases that are happening this year are an insect area. You can see the big monarch there is going to be in that. The welding program also was able to make that for us next door. And so it's going to be all the different native and pollinator plants in that area with all the butterfly benches, little bug catcher and viewers for people who want to really examine that. There's also going to be a down shipwreck area that's just off of our tree house area. And that's going to have a big grass collection with it to kind of show you all the different grasses that are great for this area. There's also going to be a fairy tunnel too. So it should be pretty cool. So the future of the gardens, we're updating the trails with accessible pathway mixes. So if you've been there recently, it's kind of a bigger gravel, and it's not very nice on the feet or on with wheelchairs or with strollers. So we're really investing this year. We're getting a really small pathway mix that has a polymer in it that's going on all of those. So it should be super nice for rolling along there. We're also installing new fences around the full 30 acres. We have a fencing around, I believe it's about 25 of the acres, but it's got bigger openings in it, and it's supposed to be a deer fence. But I've seen the deer Superman through it, and they like gelatinize their bodies, and it's really weird, and they need to stay out. But we're getting all new fencing just because we've had, we acquired more land and everything. We are hoping to get an updated, we're doing a silent kind of capital campaign to do some capital improvements. So we would reorient. So right now, our entrance is off of, it's really blurry on here, I'm sorry, but First Avenue. Eventually we might move off of 4th Ave, and we want to get at least a parking lot done this year. So a nicer, bigger parking lot and a potential gatehouse. Like this would be a visitor center, but we're looking for just a gatehouse this year, just start collecting that revenue and getting us off the ground, basically, and really knowing how many visitors we've got coming. There's a potential English garden that could be going in this year as well. So here's our kitchen garden. The English garden would be going right into there. And then we have yurts. They're not on here, but our yurts are 30-foot kind of canvas round, kind of tent-looking things, but they're a semi-permanent building. We've got one. We're putting 2 more in to have more of those preschool classes. And we are going to be continuing the development of those existing gardens, like we said, and we're increasing staff. So lots of things are happening at the gardens. So that's just an overview of the gardens. Now we're really going to get into that design portion of things, what you all came here for. I just had to put my spiel in for the gardens, of course. So how to plan a successful garden. When you're brainstorming, I know you all want to get outside right now, and you're like, I just need to see and touch the soil. I need green in my life. So start really going outside, envisioning if you wanted to create a garden or you want to enhance your gardens, start thinking about these things. What is your style or feel of your gardens? Do you have more of that Asian inspiration, kind of a Zen garden feel? Are you really into hostas? Do you want to go more towards the natives and more of a prairie look? Think about that. And then, like I said, are you adding to your existing landscape? Then what is your budget? You really want to think about that. Am I taking divisions from a friend's yard, or am I going all out? I'm going to the nursery and the garden center, and we're just going to load the car up, let's go. Or are you doing it yourself, or are you having someone else do it? Having a crew come out or something like that. And then how much time do you want to put into this, both initially and later on? So think about that. Who will maintain those gardens? Do you have a person coming out, or is it you out in the back with your pruners and a hose? And then what plants are best suited for your area? So really think, I'm used to Zone 4 up in Wausau. I don't know if we're getting into Zone 5-ish here or not. Not really? Okay. So we're on the same page with the Zone 4. Okay, cool. Because be careful with the plants and when you're dreaming, because in catalogs they can try to trick you and tell you, what's great for this area? Sometimes not. So look into your zones. And then where can I use these concepts that we're going to go through? In your veggie gardens. You can create a beautiful veggie garden if you wanted to. In fruit production, you can even include fruit plants in along your foundation plantings if you want. I've learned that blueberries are wonderful shrubs. And like I said, those foundation plantings, container plantings, maybe you just have a little deck or something and you want to just create something beautiful in this area. Or just your entire landscape you're doing. So we're going to be going through these design concepts. So simplicity, variety, balance, emphasis, sequence, scale, and unity. Don't worry, I won't make you memorize those. They're just things to think about as you go along. And you're going to be like, oh, I see this all the time in these landscapes. And it'll just kind of trigger like, yes, that is the look that I want to go for. So simplicity. So elements that do not provide impact, get them out of there. Or if you don't like them, get them out. So basically, if it's just this little baby plant and it's been struggling to survive and it's really stressful, don't worry about it anymore. Get rid of it because it's not providing that impact in your garden. So you need to prioritize. If something takes a lot of pruning and you just loathe it, maybe try something else. So clean, neat, and organized is something to consider. If you're going for more of the prairie look, then you're going to go opposite of that. But if you want just a nice, simple foundation planting, just kind of keeping it neat like that. When you incorporate too many different varieties, it can be kind of scattery and your eye doesn't know where to look. And you're like, I have no idea what's happening in here. So basically, the result of this would be an easier to maintain landscape that is very functional. And like I said, if you don't like it, get rid of it. If you ever watch Garden Answer, she's got, her name's Laura. She's like, I don't like it. After a year, she'll pull it out. like, oh, that was a nice shrub. But so like up in this picture, we had lived in a farmhouse, and these hostas were there. I don't necessarily like these hostas, but they made a really nice impact on this landscape because it was just all along. It was a double like wraparound porch. It was all along there. They were so full. It was just gorgeous. And I didn't need to do anything else, even though I wanted to add other plants. I was like, oh, these are so simple, so beautiful. Let's keep it. And I could have done a lot of different hanging baskets on there. I think I had 20 hanging baskets. And I could have done, every other, but I needed that simplicity to keep the eye moving throughout that landscape. So in this picture, this is super clean lines, and you can see they just use a couple different varieties of plants in here. And it makes it super flowing and super simple. But in reality, you've got 1, 2, 3 different types of plants, and then there's some other ones back in here. So actually, they had quite a few different plant varieties, but keeping that repetitive motion throughout your gardens is going to help flow it through the garden. And also that you can see with your edging, whether you do edging or not. So this is just like a brick, they call it a bullet paver. Or you can do like the poly, black poly that you dig down, aluminum edging, or you can just keep it a natural edge as well. Having that edge there where your grass isn't running into it really keeps your eye flowing through it as well and keeps it nice and clean. So then you want to incorporate variety as well. So your shape, size, and form of your plants. So you really want to have diversity, but not too much. Try those different textures, colors, and those different forms, whether it's upright, kind of draping down, and consider different hard goods as well. So maybe it's those boulders or your pavers that you might have, or your pottery selection, or your different ceramics that you're incorporating in as well. So this one, I will admit, it's a little bit of a crazier kind of annual pot selection. I kind of used what we had extras of. But you can see when you're looking at your different varieties, you've got your thriller, so up here. And then you've got your fillers in between here, and then you've got your spillers. So think about your thrillers, fillers, and your spillers as you're going through designing even your pots or even in your landscape too. You want something to catch your eye, your focal point. Then you need your middle ground, and then you need something lower to pull your eye through the landscape. So thrillers, fillers, and spillers. Even use it in cut flower design too. So this is a lot of variety in here, but you can see that they chose to use a lot of the upright, grassy, very fine look to things. So a lot of it is that spiky kind of plant material, but it meshes well together because they all have that. And then they did bring in some other like bulkier texture as well, even with that pine too, just to break things up a bit. They did repeat some of these plants in here. If you wanted a more formal landscape, you would put those in clumps, like in like the 3s and stuff like that. 3s, 5s, 7s, and you would clump them a little more. This is a very natural look. So balance. Everything carries a visual weight. Even that big piece of pottery or that big statue, it all carries a weight in that garden, okay? Or even that big maple that's in your front yard. So kind of, if you're looking at your front yard, you want to look at that, take a step back and look at your landscape and see which side might be weighed down more visually from the street. So are you also looking for a formal or informal look to your gardens? Do you want to keep, is your house very square, very symmetrical? Then you might want to keep a formal landscape using those even numbers, like 1 on each side, and really 2s, 4s, 6s when you're planting things. And then you want to disperse that weight equally. So as you're looking at this, the top one that is very symmetrical, very formal, this middle one, it is balanced because this tree isn't overpowering that house. And you're weighing this side with more shrubs, if you can see it that way. This side is way heavy over on this side because you've got such big trees. If you popped this baby tree over to here, it would balance it out way better. And you've got a few too many shrubs on this side, so you would need to pop something over that way. A lot of people, this doesn't really matter. If you're really getting into design, you can think about this, but it's not a biggie in my mind. So like just showing some balance in the gardens, you can just see you've got the two trees on either side that are balancing each other out, and the visual weight of each of these plants is really balancing it out. You can see how they flanked with those shrubs as well, and they flanked the house with both of those big tree lots there. So emphasis, like we said, we want to create that emphasis, accentuate parts of the design. So if you really want to pull attention to this cool corner you have, really think about how you can lead the eye there, whether it's using plants to flow it, or you're using that focal point plant, or that key plant, and use different textures, different forms, whether it's that cool weeping larch, or you might have a weeping caragana, or it's a columnar sort of tree that's really pulling your eye to that area. And then using those specimens is best, and you can even go to your garden centers and be like, what kind of cool specimen plants do you have? And they'll be like, come here, let's show you. And they can soften that architectural feature as well. So if you've got a corner that's really rigid looking and you just want to soften that up, or you want to kind of cover it a little bit, you can use those specimen plants, or you can even use like your little ivies and stuff here. So I thought this was really cool because this door was like random, kind of a loading dock door, but they're able to kind of cover it up and you don't even really notice it with all of those beautiful fall colors. And I believe that was like a Boston ivy on there. And so creating that emphasis, like I said, you could use a statue, whatever it is. So this is creating emphasis up to this statue here by using pavers. So kind of think about that as well. You want little stepping stones or flagstone, whatever it is, back to an area that you want to create attention with. This is another kind of cool concept. If you have some cool garden art pieces, if you plant, like these are annuals, this is guara, but you can use perennials or anything like that. They planted them by the base. So you notice your eye, when you look, it whoop, draws right up to these kind of cool trees. So they purposely kind of planted those to draw your eye up to the garden art and then back over to another one by using those more upright plants, more colorful. Same here. It's a very simple design here, but you're like, oh, there's a spike, and then you're leading your eye all through there, and it probably leads you to something cool. So then you want to create sequence in your garden as well. So transitioning those plant varieties, you want to not be too abrupt in the garden. So you want to just gradually transition into different plant varieties. So like in here, these are, I think, some sort of arborvitae, and it's transitioning into another different type or form by using a ground cover. And it's not too abrupt on the eyes. Otherwise, if you had these separated without this ground cover, it would look kind of weird, like, oh, jump, jump, jump. So kind of consider that as you go along as well, or just shorter plants to transition from each size as well. And just create that smooth and appealing design. And remember, those abrupt changes just don't flow very well. So this is a great example of sequence as well. So it's using a lot of the same plant materials, and then it's jumping to and flowing into another plant variety by using multiples. And it's just flowing your way up and out. So you really look at a lot of those different plant varieties within there. And then that scale we're talking about again. So size of components and how they relate. So basically you want to balance your whole landscape. So if you are looking to create a big, large scale, you want to be like in the woods, then using those larger trees, and you want to use larger shrubs along with it. You don't want to use teeny tiny little shrubs because it's going to look weird against that big landscape behind it. So in a normal kind of scale, more of like a, let's say, more of like a country home, you've got a little bit of acreage to deal with, you can use probably like the 30-foot tree marks. Just over your house would be a nice scale for that. And then using some, taller to medium-sized shrubs, and then gradually going down to your smaller perennials. And then your small scale would be using those really dwarf varieties in your yard, or semi-dwarf, let's say, fruit trees that are only going to get the 12 to 15-foot mark on those. So scale-wise, these are pretty balanced. This one has a larger scale because it's a larger home. So you've got your bigger canopy trees around it, and then it pulls it down nicely with like the columnar arborvitae, and then we gradually go down and down to different sizes. So that one's scaled nicely. This one, I would say this is more of that kind of medium to small scale, because it's using smaller trees. It doesn't overpower the house, and then it gradually moves down to those nice bigger shrubs, and then you get down to your perennials as well. So then you want to create unity in your garden as well, nice and peaceful. So everything should work together. If something, like I said, is sticking out like a sore thumb, and you just don't like it, get it gone, find something else. There are tons of plant varieties out there for you to use. So basically you want to link each part of your landscape if you can. So bring something from your front yard into the backyard if you can. So when you're walking through, you're like, oh, I've noticed that. This is the same yard. We're still going through this. And include those walkways, pathways, stairs, fences, to just keep things moving throughout your landscape, and using a little bit of that repetition just to bring everything together. So with that meditation garden, we use these grasses along the way just to keep things really flowing throughout the landscape. And like, oh yes. And there's similar textured irises on the other side to really keep things flowing through. There's a lot of red buds and rhododendron as well. So then you want to think about the 5 elements of plants. As you're browsing around looking at those plants, what are the elements you're looking for, or what am I exactly looking for in that plant? So the plant type. So is it a tree, shrub, perennial? Is it an annual? You want to look at all of that. And then what is its height and width? What is its form? So is it that upright? Is it a spreading? Or is it a creeper on the ground? You really want to look at that and kind of research it. And what is its seasonal interest? A lot of the times the tag will tell you right when it's going to bloom, or if it's going to have any sort of fall color to it, or anything like that, or if the bark is just pretty or something like that. And then also look at its texture as well. Then, as you're looking at that plant type, look at environmental factors. So, does it want full sun and you've got full shade? And it's probably not meant to be. So look at those different sun tolerances. So kind of think about full sun, 6+ hours of sunlight. Or think of, kind of look at your south or western exposure. That'll be sun, usually. Look at, kind of observe for a while in that area. If you're looking at full shade, it is usually less than 4 hours of sunlight a day. So consider that as you're going along. Moisture tolerance, do you have sand? Do you have gravel? Do you have loamy? Or do you have clay? Kind of consider that, because some plants like wet feet and some do not. So consider that. And that cold hardiness we were talking about. So look for zone 4 or less when you're choosing plants. Any higher than that, it may not tolerate our winters. So we had talked about like whether things are herbaceous perennials, annuals, shrubs, or trees. So, This is a tree, and then we've got, these are like an herbaceous perennial. So perennials come back every year, and then annuals are usually more of the tropical looking, and they're going to be higher in zone. They're going to die off every year. So consider that as you're going along. Oh. Let's see. Hello? We'll keep this one up here. Maybe it was. Okay, we'll keep it up here. Can you hear me yet? Okay. 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 So that, no? Okay, we're done with it, I guess. Here, like this. Okay. So the height and width of your plants you want to consider. So what is the mature height? It might look really baby in that pot right now and you want to plant a lot of them, but then it ends up being like a 4x4 perennial and you're like, what have I done? There's too many. So trust what it says at maturity. Give it a little time if you can. So usually in about 2 to 3 years, you're gonna be hitting a pretty mature height on a lot of your perennials. I know with trees, they say plant them yesterday. But if you can get a larger caliper of trees, like the trunk width on them, remember though that the larger tree you're going to plant, like every inch of caliper on that trunk is usually an inch of stress or a year of stress that it's going to go through once you plant it. So it might stay kind of stagnant in growth if it's a 3-inch caliper for about 3 years usually. So if you do get in a little incher caliper tree, it usually you'll pop to it in the second year. It'll be like, oh, I'm ready to grow now. So kind of consider that as you go. But perennials are really forgiving and they usually start going really fast. Shrubs are usually pretty good to go as well. If anything is slow growing, they usually label it as slow growing. So kind of consider that. And a lot of evergreens are a little slower growing. And then make sure you have the space for that mature growth. So as you are planting, envision, if it says it's going to get 36 inches and you want to plant one next to it, measure, if you want them touching eventually, you want to measure from the center 36 inches to 36 inches. If you want some space in between there, you got to go further than that. So consider that as you're planting as well. And then, like I said, the time to maturity depends on each plant type as well. So like in this area, they really paid attention. This is at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. They really paid attention, these are all annuals, to their height and their width to fit all of these in and create those layers. So your plant form, like we talked about, the thriller, filler, and the spiller. So you have your columnar plants. So like this canna here creates that columnar kind of barrier, and it kind of makes it look formal. Then you have spreading plants that might be going outward, side to side. Then you also have your uprights, which could be called columnar as well. Just kind of think about a pine tree as columnar, or not a pine, a spruce. And then you have your oval, which is easy for your eye to flow over. See how it just like, whoop, you just go into these impatiens and then down and flow down. So kind of consider the cool different plant forms that you can incorporate into your garden. So like your roundy moundy little perennials you might put in with a nice upright grass and then a nice weeping kind of specimen. That might be fun. So consider your seasonal interest as well. Pay attention to that as you're going along. Is it going to provide interest in the wintertime? This is something to consider with our longer winters here. Or can I leave them up throughout the winter and are they going to be able to take a little bit of a snow load? So basically you want to look at your blooms, your bark, your leaf color, your plant structure, and your seed heads that you might be able to leave up. So like we have these alliums up front, and they stay up all winter long. Even with the ice storm we have, they're still kicking, and they're providing something to look at throughout the winter time. And like evergreens here as well. We have some red pine bark, and just over from there we have a bunch of like birch varieties as well to give us some seasonal interest there. Well, all season long, but a lot of winter interest in this area with like red twig dogwoods as well. So consider this. Are you looking to create a warm space, very stimulating, and it kind of calls your attention with like the oranges, the pinks, the reds, the yellows? Or do you want to create a very relaxing, more meditative area with cool colors? So like sticking with your purples, your greens, your kind of blues and whites. That's what you want to create in that area. So like in a backyard patio situation, if you want to just go back there and lay in a hammock, then I do kind of cool colors back in there. If you want to have a party in an area, your warm colors are probably going to be the best. So then we kind of talked about those different textures as well. So in your leaves, your bark, your branching, you might have some really cool textures. Like, have you ever seen a bur oak where it has the craggly branches? In the bark, we talked about like the river birch or like a white or like a paper birch. Consider all of those things. And leaves, you know, create so much texture as well. So fine leaves, so very like those little tufty grasses we looked at before, make the space seem larger. When you have things that have a very coarse leaf on them or very large, it kind of pulls that space in and it makes it seem smaller. So consider that if you want to make it really seem big when it's a tiny little backyard, really use those finer textured plants. So those influences on design. You want to create function. We talked about that. Maintenance. Who's doing it? Environmental sustainability. Visual enjoyment. Do you love it? And then that cost. So make your needs known if you're having someone design it or you're going out to a garden center and you're like, I have to stick to a budget, or I really want this plant. Let's work off of this idea and see what we can do from there. So function. Use practical widths and spacing. If you know the plant is going to be too big, just let's not. Because it's just going to cause irritation and havoc in the meantime. Create those clear sight lines. If you have a backyard with a really cool, kind of picturesque look out from there, don't block that. Or if you need to see the street to know what's happening, don't block it with a big tree or something like that. And then, is it a usable space for you? Really consider that. What do you need in order to enjoy your space? And is it multi-purpose? So an example for this dry riverbed here, it's pretty, it's visual, and it also creates that riverbed if we need it to in the spring with all the drainage from the pond going into another retention pond over here. So it has multiple uses for it. So then the maintenance. Go for a low input approach. Even if you think you have a lot of time to do it, a lot of times you don't. I'm like, oh, I have plenty of time. I could do it. You know, when I get home at 7. And then I'm out picking tomatoes at 9 o'clock at night. So create natural edges that can be mowed easily. So making sure, so consider this. If you put a block that's above the grass, then you're gonna have to probably weed whip that area to keep that grass from growing up really tall. So if you keep it flush with the mower, you can just mow right on top of there. So kind of consider that as you go along. Keep areas large enough to walk through. If you have to take a machete through, it's probably not good. Don't trip. So just, and consider, do I have to get a lawnmower through there? Do we have a tractor we have to get through? Or do I need to access that area with a truck or something later on? So really, you might go overboard on some of your gardens and be like, oh boy, I shouldn't have made this one that big. So really kind of take the time to plan them out. And like we said, be sure of those mature sizes and avoid hedges and topiaries if you don't like pruning. That spiral or that pom-pom cute juniper you're looking at might look really cool, but actually you're probably going to have to prune it like twice a year in order for it to keep its form. And they're already kind of stressed out for you. So keep in mind that. So environmental sustainability, provide that food and water for your habitat and for your wildlife. So consider leaving your plant standing. If you can, stand it yourself. I know a lot of people like to take all your plants down in fall. You just need to do that cleanup. But a lot of the times you can leave that for winter interest, like you saw those alliums or even hydrangeas. Grasses are great to leave up over the winter as well. And actually, beneficial insects are actually burrowing in there and overwintering over the winter time, and they're surviving, and then they're going to perk up when we hit about the 50-degree mark for about 5 to 7 consecutive days. They'll come on out of their hiding for the winter, and they're going to say thank you for leaving that up for the winter. Also, you can like echinacea or coneflower or rudbeckia, black-eyed Susan, stuff like that. A lot of the natives, the birds are going to eat, and the different wildlife are going to eat those seed heads. They're fun to look at, and they're benefiting the wildlife as you're going through the winter time as well. And then if you do feel the urge to clean up your gardens or prune things down in the spring, you just got to get it done. Consider leaving that pile of debris in your yard or in the vicinity to let them come out of their overwintering stages in that area, because you want them to come back to your yard. So consider that. Also, plant those locally grown native hardy plants in this area. If it seems very tropical, we might not have beneficial insects that can benefit from that plant or use it in any way. So consider that. And then reduce irrigated lawn areas if you can. And then reduce impervious surfaces as well. So like big patios, blacktop, stuff like that. Also, that is a bumblebee butt. He's really cute. He comes back. Ooh. So visual enjoyment. Create those clean concept lines. Have openings in the landscape to improve visual appeal. Okay, so they made an opening for this big fella. If you're ever down in Ames, Iowa at Ryman Gardens, visit this fella. He's cool. So it created visual enjoyment, and they made space in the garden for it. So if you want to put a giant gnome in your yard. So soften those hard features. So basically, he had a patio underneath him, and he's pretty structurally sound there. So they softened him up with all the plants around him. So those specimen plants to really draw the eye in. So on the way into, he had like a little pathway with plants leading up to the gnome, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey buddy, how's it going? And then those key plants really blend in and help everything design, help the design flow. So like we talked about, what is your budget and who's maintaining it? So to reduce your costs, consider this. Start with smaller plants, and then that spacing for mature sizes as well. And shop around. I love to shop. I could call myself a shopaholic. But I'll go around to all the different nurseries in the springtime, and I will make mental notes, or you can write down which nursery or which garden center specializes in what. Are they specializing in natives? Do they have these certain shrubs? Are they really into evergreens? Or are they more annuals? So kind of consider that as you go along. So when you're looking at your pricing, this tree is probably going to be between $100 and I'd say $300. When you get up to a 25-gallon pot, you're not going to want to lift it, and it's probably going to be towards the $500 mark. So kind of consider that, and it's really not that much bigger. It's probably 1.5 inches versus 1 inch in caliper size. And this is probably a 6 to 8 foot tree, where this one maybe 8 to, I don't want to say 10 even, because they prune them for transport. So they're not even that much taller a lot of the time too. So I would say, so shrub-wise, 2 gallons are fabulous because they're really easy to manage. And a lot of the times they're more stout. They prune them to be a little shorter just to balance out the pot. Where a 5-gallon is going to be, you know, double that price usually. And it's going to be taller and lankier because they try to squeeze so many in, like around it for in the nurseries and everything like that. So yes, you're going to get your height on it, but it might not be as nice on the bottom side. So kind of consider that as you go along as well. If you can get like a lot of natives from like Prairie Moon or Prairie Nursery, they're doing a lot of like mail orders. You can order online and they deliver them right to your door. They're going with like pint sizes or 4 inchers, and they're way more economical than what a gallon would be. So like a gallon perennial would usually range, I would give it anywhere from $8 to $20, where these pints are probably going to range around like the $5 to $8 mark. So you can get, you know, double for your money, and they're going to take off quicker with the smaller varieties. If a garden center owner was here, they'd probably like hit my hand. But just consider those things. I know we want that instant gratification, but if you're on a budget, consider those. So planning those gardens, get out your catalogs. Start dreaming while we're trying to have things melt up here. So start that wish list. If you want a certain plant, go search for that plant, and that is your base plant to kind of think off of. And then look back what was successful in the past. Maybe there's just a different variety of that plant that you want to try, or a different color. And then maybe start a garden journal from year to year. What really worked and what didn't? What pests did you have? Did the Japanese beetles come and attack all of your roses? Yes. Maybe I should try something else, because I just was picking Japanese beetles off continuously. So if you want to record any big like weather conditions or storms that might have happened, any diseases, those insects, pests, fertilizer applications, crop loss, and any harvest dates. And then what do you want to try differently? Kind of make some goals for this year. And then how big is your space? Can you fit it all? I can't, but consider all of those things. Sourcing your plants, so they're seed starting, propagating, catalog ordering, greenhouses, and garden centers. So remember with that seed starting, you're going to need room usually for 6 to 8 weeks to grow those plants. It might seem fun to start them, and then 6 to 8 weeks later, you're like, get them out of the house. I've had enough of them. So kind of think about your natural light. Are you going to need grow lights as well? And can you maintain temperatures in that area, 55 to 75 degrees? And then read those labels. Because if you start a sunflower indoors, you're probably going to have trouble transplanting it, and it's going to grow way too fast for you. So if it says sow outside, just sow it in the ground outside. If it says 6 to 8 weeks, start at 6 to 8 weeks. And then look at the difference between the different pots. If you use a plastic one with a plastic liner or a reusable pot, if you look at the peat pots, they might disintegrate on you a little bit, and you're going to need some sort of a tray underneath it. So really consider all of those. And just, I always preach, don't start too early. I do it myself because I get excited, and then I need them out of my house. Propagating, starting plants from existing plants, so dividing from your neighbor, let's say. Rooting offsets, so like these are hens and chicks or sempervivums, succulents basically, they're hardy. So basically what they'll do is start them off of one, and then they create all of these little babies off of there. So it might be a fun project even for over the winter to try dividing and creating these. It does take a little patience, even if you're rooting something as well. So just be patient with it and see if it works. And if not, oh well, try again. And then catalogs are those great resources for you. So it gives you a lot of inspiration. So a lot of them are seed sources. So if you're looking something that looks beautiful in the catalog and then it says seeds, a lot of times you're like, oh no, I didn't want the seeds. So then you might have to try a different resource for the actual plants. So if you are ordering seeds, pay attention to seed count and the cold hardiness on them if you think it's going to come back from year to year. And then a lot of the times, some varieties of, let's say, vegetables, they might be stretching our limits as to how long our growing season is. 120 max usually for days to harvest you want to look at. Beyond that, you might be getting frosted out. And then keep your shipping dates in mind, like as you're putting in your electronic orders, they might say, oh, I'm going to ship right now, or oh, I'm going to ship in mid-May when the plant material is ready to come. So just be aware of that. They might be delaying the shipments for you. And then if there are shrubs and trees, a lot of the times they're going to actually have bare root that they're going to send you instead of a potted version because it's lighter, easier to transport. So a lot of the times check when that delivery is coming because you're going to need to plant it right away or keep those roots nice and moist during that time. So those greenhouses and garden centers are great. It's great to see the plant health, and you can kind of compare all the plant varieties too, and you can look at the tags, spend hours out there. The staff are great resources, and they may be able to source different unique plants. If you're really looking for something, see if they can order something in for you. And they may have those installation services or designers available for you. So start your wish list. Do your research. Spend a little time on it. Make your design influences number one. And just be realistic as you're going through everything. Try something new and exciting. And create peace with the plants and don't create a constant battle, if you can. And now, if you'd like to contact us, you can. I will field questions, and I don't know if you want to chat at all, but otherwise, I can field questions. If it's, design concept questions, if you have questions about a specific plant, I can try. But we won't be able to do full consultations here tonight. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll be happy to come to you with the microphone. And we've got one right up here in front.
Well, after listening to you, I realize I have to move a hemlock, but it's a little one.
Yeah.
So so when can I do that?
So with that little hemlock, if you can do it right away in spring, once the ground thaws out enough, if you can do it right away in spring, because then it'll have enough time to set new little roots and get themselves all grounded throughout the season. So, and then just, give him enough water here in spring because we might have some dry periods. Just make sure he's doing well. And you could even give it a little bit of root stimulator in water too, just to get his roots back in the ground. And then make sure, so if it's a cute little tree, you want to dig around that drip line as well. So where the branches go out, kind of look directly down under there, that's its drip line, and you want to incorporate all those roots. You don't want to go too far in because you're going to take some of its main roots off, so go at that drip line. Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Kathleen.
I have a forsythia. I always get forsythia and honeysuckle mixed up.
Yeah.
I have a forsythia that, whatever it is, it's the plant that's supposed to flower before it leaves out.
Yes, the yellow ones.
The yellow one.
Yes.
Whatever that's called.
Right in spring.
Yes.
Yep. First one usually.
And I have had several years where I get maybe a dozen blossoms and that's it.
Oh boy. Is it in a full sun area?
Yes.
Okay, so it's doing good there. I'm wondering if the variety is not necessarily cold hardy where it's getting its buds frozen off. There's varieties called like Show Off and is it something Baby, where they were really pushing them a few years back. Or is it Starlet or something like that too? They were really pushing them because they have really showy buds on them, but they ended up being more towards zone 5 and they aren't producing buds like they're supposed to.
It's about 10 years old,
Okay.
and I'm wondering if it just wants to die.
Maybe it's just not meant to be. Yeah, and you could try to find, maybe if you wanted to give it one more chance, you could maybe try to find a more like an alcove area or a more protected area for the wintertime to see, or and you don't want to cover it either. But yeah, seeing if you have like a little warmer spot, like more up against the house or something, and oh, it's big. Yeah. I know. Oh yeah, if it's causing you issues, get it gone.
Be brave.
Compost it. Give it to somebody else to try. I don't know.
Toss it. Other questions? Okay, Ann's going to get you from that side.
What about the use of ferns?
Do you like ferns?
I love ferns.
Okay, so great in shade. Some are a little more sun tolerant. So using ferns, be careful of ostrich ferns. They might take over and start grabbing your feet. So they really go to town and you can share with others. But those are those big, like 3-foot, big, like feathery ferns. There's anything, you can do like maidenhair ferns, which are more very dainty and pretty. You can use Japanese painted ferns, which are more of like a burgundy color with more of blues and greens. There's like varieties called Pictum, Ghost, and Godzilla in Japanese painted ferns. Then you can do like your regular cinnamon ferns, which are more, they have like a frond, a fertile fern frond that comes up, and it's more of like a cinnamon color. There's interrupted ferns, which they send up a frond, and it's interrupted by those basically sterile little pollen. They shoot it out from there. And there's like sensitive ferns, all sorts of different varieties. A great resource to kind of look at more native varieties would be if you hop on like prairienursery.com, and they have beautiful plant catalogs in there, and you can type in your exact like soil, you've got shade, you've got this, and you're looking for a fern, and they'll show you all the different varieties. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Coming,
She's
Mike.
coming.
I'm coming.
Tips on a butterfly bush.
Whew, those are tough because they're marginally hardy. They're more zone 5. So if you can keep them protected, you could try to, cut them down a little bit and then like even cover them with like balsam branches or something over the winter time to just keep that like microclimate around them. You might be able to get them to come back. Because you're thinking the purple like clusters, yep. So they're going to be marginal. You could try to like bring it even in the garage or something over the winter, and then pop it back out. But totally up to you. Or just use it as an annual. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How important is it to protect tea roses from wind?
Those are going to be pretty intensive. So whether it's the bunnies getting at it or you've got your just winters are going to be hard on them, they're naturally going to die back a little bit. So what I suggest, don't prune them in fall. Let them naturally die back to where they're going to. And then I would cover them with like those balsam branches, pine branches, whatever it is. I wouldn't do straw because you're going to have like little mice and stuff in there. But I'd use those branches to really cover up that base in order to keep that base alive. And then in spring, you will see exactly where it's trying to bud out and where it's alive, then cut down and cut that dead off until there. So, and just make sure they're zone hardy. Answer your question? Good? The wind. So like during the summertime, as long as you've got, it might dry out the buds a little bit, but they should be able to tolerate a good amount of wind. That shouldn't, as long as you've got enough, water in the soil and everything, it should be fine. Yeah. I wouldn't say that, but if you're going through a dry spell, like let's say a week, I'd give them a little bit of supplemental watering. If you're noticing the leaves are getting kind of silvery or your buds just aren't lasting, they're kind of drying out, then that's probably an irrigation issue. It needs to take that up because that wind is making it evaporate so much. Yeah.
You mentioned, hello. You mentioned blueberries, using blueberries as hedges. What else do I need to know about that as far as, like, can I move older ones? What kind of, do I need to prune it? How can I make it stress-free?
So if you have some existing blueberries, you can definitely, if they're really kind of old and kind of really rough looking at the base, kind of consider when you're pruning them, you're going to want to prune them, let me think, after they bud out. So like in fall, you're going to want to prune them, summer into fall. Prune them down, and using the third rule when you're pruning. So you're take a third of the top growth off and a third of the large mature growth. If you do that every 1 to 2 years, you're going to keep a nice rejuvenated plant. Blueberries are very slow to grow, so you might go on the 2 to 3 year mark with that, with the pruning, to keep them a nice size. And then you want to take out any dead, diseased, damaged material out of there. And then if you want to move those large ones, it's probably going to stress them out a little bit, and they might stay stressed for a few years, like 1 or 2 years usually. But you want to make sure you're going at that drip line, so the very outside of those branches, digging down, going down deep enough to get a substantial root ball on there, and then you can, move it, and then you're just going to have to keep up with watering while it's getting its little roots going. So a lot of different varieties now, they're not necessarily the high bush blueberries, but they're more of kind of dwarf, semi-dwarf varieties that are about 2 to 3 feet. So they make really nice foundation planting like shrubs. So you get your spring blossom, which is gorgeous. Then you get your awesome blueberry set, and then you're going to get your fall color with those as well. So, so like Blue Crop, Patriot, North Sky, North Country are some good ones. Yeah.
This may be, we have some old honeysuckle against the garage.
Yeah.
And only about 1.5 foot of soil there.
Okay.
What kind of life expectancy do you have with old honeysuckle vines?
They will usually live forever. Which is good.
So whack them down?
Yeah, you could honestly rejuvenate that. You could literally take it down to like a little knob about 3 inches. It'll come back with a vengeance. It'll love it. If it's getting too top heavy, yeah, just cut it down and it'll set new shoots. Oh, with those, they're more of a summer bloomer, so I'd go towards after bloom in fall. You might just have reduced blooms in summertime if you cut now, because it might be setting those blossoms right now. Yeah.
In areas where you've removed the pine trees, is the soil like real acidified from all the needles dropping there forever?
It's more dry because they used up so much of the nutrients and everything. And we have a lot of sand in the area as well. I haven't seen super significant pH differences compared to the other soils around. We don't have great soil there, so we're more adding more nutrients in and a lot of compost into there. One thing to note with all of the pines, it is acidity, and then it's also the tannins that they're releasing as well in the soil. So it's just like almost like an autotoxin that they're releasing out into the soil, and they don't like other plants to really grow underneath them. So it's kind of getting that flushed out of the soil as well.
I think we've got time for just one more.
One more.
Thank you. I have a row of very old lilac bushes, and they're not doing well. They're just,
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything I can do to rejuvenate them?
Yes. So
Down to the...
Yep.
Okay.
Down to the ground, and they will love it.
Really?
Yes, they will shoot up within probably like if you do it right away in spring.
Okay.
They'll probably pop up about 1 foot or 2 this year. You'll have new little growth, and it'll just sprout from there. It won't be exact. You might get some from those trunks, but they're going to send out little shoots from the root zone
Okay.
and come up. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Marissa.